It is likely that you are familiar with these three individuals: Ehud Barak, Naftali Bennett, and Benjamin Netanyahu. All of them served as prime ministers in the Israeli occupation state for varying periods. Despite their political rivalries and deep differences, the three of them united around one idea: their shared fear of the disappearance of Israel. Barak expressed his concern that the occupation state might face what is known as the curse of the eighth decade, as indicated by Jewish historical traditions. Israel did not survive for more than 80 years except on 2 occasions. As for Bennett, he issued a warning in 27 pages, cautioning that Israel is in danger of collapsing due to internal divisions. He warned that Israel is at risk of falling apart due to the divisions among its components. He urged Israelis not to be the cause of their country's downfall. This statement came on the anniversary of his government formation, which fell shortly after this warning. As for Netanyahu, he expressed a deep-seated wish. He wished to help Israel to survive for 100 years. 3 leaders from different parties and orientations, all haunted by the fear of disappearance. And they are not alone in this. According to Israeli researcher Gadi Ayer's study, most Israelis have this existential concern. They are preoccupied with questions about whether their stay in the Middle East will last long or if they will soon be forced to leave. This leads us to wonder, why do Israel's leaders and intellectuals predict the demise of their state, despite their apparent strength and dominance? Is this prophecy truly realistic, or is it just a baseless myth?
The topic of Israel's end has been haunting the Israeli conscience from the very beginning. Since the year 1948, because don't forget, the Zionists study history well, and they know the end of the Crusader kingdoms as well as the end of all colonial pockets in the world.
Since the early days of the Zionist movement, Israel represented the magical solution to the eternal Jewish diaspora dilemma. Throughout their long history, the Jews failed to establish any stable state. Their religious and historical consciousness is filled with memories of dispersion and fragmentation. The Zionist leaders promised their people, who flocked to Palestine from all corners, a sunny and secure homeland, with rivers flowing beneath them in the promised land of the East. But these dreams collided with a major obstacle: the original inhabitants. They refused to cleanse Europe of its sins at their expense. They resisted colonization and settlement for over 8 decades. The Zionists shed the blood of Palestinians and Arabs without accountability, occupying their land and demolishing their homes, building on their ruins what the West describes as the only democratic state in the Middle East. Israel lived prosperous decades, thanks to unlimited Western support, and also due to the disarray of Arab regimes. Long years were not devoid of challenges and wars, and yet the idea of Israel remained prosperous, and its future seemed bright. But over time, everything began to change. Death took away the founding Zionist generation: David Ben-Gurion, Moshe Dayan, Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, and others. The ruling system in Israel began to enter deep mazes. At the same time, Palestinian resistance began to intensify once again, specifically with the onset of the Second Intifada, which forced Israel to withdraw from Gaza Strip towards its end. In the first instance of withdrawal from occupied Palestinian land since the establishment of the occupying entity in the 40s. And the irony is that it happened during the era of Ariel Sharon, the last ruler from the early Zionist generation, who was dubbed the King of the Kings of Israel. After Sharon, Ehud Olmert assumed the throne. But he didn't last long. He was ousted on corruption and bribery charges. When he was the mayor of Jerusalem afterward, Netanyahu came in his second term to lead with unprecedented military and political failures. He did not win any of the wars he fought in Gaza. After the resistance targeted settlements and cities within the occupied territories during his tenure, it became a recurring pattern. Despite the intensive propaganda for the Iron Dome, which falsely promised a safe state, Netanyahu, who became the longest-serving prime minister in Israel's history and is called the man of security by his supporters, did not achieve any security accomplishment, except for killing thousands of unarmed Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Even in domestic politics, the situation was not much better. In order to secure his stay in power, Netanyahu approached the extremists, who were until yesterday enemies of Israel, leading to the killing of former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, causing deep divisions in Israeli society. Divisions that turned into rifts and cracks with judicial amendments that put Israel on the brink of a civil war. Even the Israeli president himself warned more than that. Israelis fear that the era of their state's major military achievements has passed without return, and that their invincible army is no longer able to protect itself, let alone them. Since the invasion of Lebanon, Israel has not achieved a single military victory, despite all the confrontations it engaged in, facing foes presumed to be weaker. The state of occupation failed to confront two Palestinian uprisings, then was forced to withdraw from Lebanon and from Gaza, and was defeated in the Second Lebanon War, and failed to achieve any victory in its last 4 wars on Gaza.
The Israeli army is not very good. They have some units that are very capable, some of their special forces units, some of their specialized units. They have some technical units that are very good, but the mainstay, the infantry units, the armor units, they're not very good.
All of this happened while Israelis feel besieged from all sides. Gaza and Hamas in the south, and Hezbollah and Lebanon in the north, and Iran, standing on the threshold of nuclear armament in the east. In fact, all of Israel's neighbors are its enemies, even if peace agreements were made with them. The peoples never recognized them. And this leads us to Israel's major crisis: legitimacy and recognition. Israeli leaders and their people repeat that their state is alien to the environment around them, and what protects it is only the power of American weapons and Western cover. This legitimacy dilemma is what drives Israel to fervently pursue normalization agreements, granting it a sense of security. But reality indicates that they quickly collapse in the face of the first real test, as we saw after the Al-Aqsa storm. Israel's real image has become entirely different from the one initially painted by the early Zionists. Continuous wars without victory and resistance intensifies day by day. Racial, religious, and political divisions, and a legitimacy crisis without a solution. As for the results of all this, the numbers will inform you not just from today, but since the declaration of the occupation state until 1967, in the period of the Golden Victories, more than 180,000 Israelis fled the occupied territories. In the first decade of the new millennium, more than 148,000 individuals fled from Israel, and to this day, the situation hasn't changed significantly. Perhaps it has become even more challenging. In 2015, following the Protective Edge operation, 16,700 people fled the occupied territories. Only 8,500 of them returned, and internal statistics reveal that there are 800,000 individuals holding Israeli passports residing abroad, and they do not wish to return to Israel. As for their brethren, their files accumulate at the embassies of Europe and America in Tel Aviv, where having a white passport on a black day, especially after they witnessed the specters of their fears appearing before them following the evacuation of thousands of settlers from the Gaza Strip after the Operation Al-Aqsa storm. even though displacement had been the exclusive domain of Palestinians for many decades.
Millions of Israelis have dual citizenship, and they'll just leave Israel. I mean, that's the death of Israel.
These settlers left, leaving behind the lands they seized and evidence of an occupation that was here until recently. And settlements empty on their thrones whisper to everyone that it was a settlement project, so it's irreversible.